This show is not intended for the politically correct or the closed-minded. Enter at the risk of opening your eyes. You have been warned.
Why does the media attack an issue? To get primetime ratings?
In my line of work, you got to keep repeating things over and over and over again for the truth to sink in.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
A moment comes when we step out from the old to the new, and when the soul of a nation, long suppressed, finds utterance.
To kind of catapult the propaganda.
You are listening to Open Eyes with your host, Ira Robinson. From the normal to the paranormal, from government cover-ups to the depths of our consciousness, we aim to explore all things. From the dawn of prehistory to current events, no topic is forbidden and nothing remains hidden.
No more secrets.
Open your eyes and open your mind to the fact that life as we know it is not as we have been taught. Join us at LateNightInTheMidlands.com or OpenEyesNetwork.com as we take this brief journey through the depths of the cosmos and explore what it really means to be human.
Many peoples have sacrificed their liberties, only to learn to their sorrow that deceit and mockery, poverty and tyranny are their reward.
Whether you're online or offline, intercontinental or intergalactic, hello and welcome to Open Eyes. It is Friday. We are live and we are in person with you, and hopefully you guys are ready for a really good show tonight. If you want to call in, you can do so. The number is 260-494-3937. Our Skype line is JDA Film, and as always, you can reach us in the chat room at LNM Radio Network. We're also live streaming, as always, over to YouTube. You can find us over there at youtube.com/C/Open Eyes Network. Come on over, hit the little subscribe button, hit the like button. Make sure you guys share out this show so that we can, well, get more viewers. Hey, why not, right? We got to plug ourselves there. Tonight we have a really special show. Hopefully you guys are really ready for some great information, some great music, just a great time tonight. We have Ed Roman coming on with us, and we'll bring him on here in just a moment. But again, if you guys want to call in and join in with us, 260-494-3937. This has been a heck of a week, and boy, we had a really big show yesterday. A lot of people got into contact with us to get the information about the areas where they could donate to these different charities that are working down there with the hurricanes. And I unfortunately don't have the list on the website yet for you guys to make use of. Maggie hasn't gotten it to me yet. But if you guys want to make sure that you get that information, don't forget that we do have that archive of the show available up there at our website, OpenEyesNetwork.com. It's also on YouTube as well. So if you want at least to write down the list or things along those lines, she did read out all of the link information from the show. So I just want to let you know we will archive the info as far as the links and that kind of thing goes once we get that list. But it's, she's a very busy woman, so we have to sort of play with her time there. So anyways, but without further ado, let me go ahead and bring my guest on. Tonight we have Ed Roman. He's a musician, paranormal expert, really overall just a really nice guy. And I hope that you guys are going to enjoy tonight's show. Ed, hello. Welcome to the show.
Ira, it's a pleasure to be here. How are you, my friend?
So far, so good. I can't complain, and it doesn't do me any good to do so anyway. So
I was just saying that to somebody the other day, and he laughed at me, and, we went separate ways. But it's like, I just got to keep going, right?
Exactly. Well, before we begin, for those that, I don't know, for weird people out there that have never heard about you, why don't you give out a little bit of information about yourself so that people know where you're coming from with all of this stuff?
Well, I'm a musician by trade, and fell in love with music at a very young age. Grew up in a household with a lot of people, two of which were my grandparents, Eastern European background, Slovak, and music came through them, my parents, my older brothers and sisters. But that sort of connection to the paranormal started with the sort of family allegory. Things that happened in the old country. In the old country, this is what happened, and part of my family story was my grandmother had a brother. His name was Ergi, and he was born with all of his hair and teeth and could already speak. And the village, kind of looked at this, and I'm sure many people that are probably listening are like, pardon? As something that was either like the kid was a mystic or, the devil, my great-grandmother had the devil's child, basically, or something like that. But he, from a very young age, because he was already articulating and speaking and even talking to people all the time, would say to them, this is when I'm going to die. This is how I'm going to die. This is what's going to happen on the day, the event, all of this kind of stuff. And, this was a story that and it happened. It literally occurred at the age of 11, just like he said. He went, laid underneath this tree. That was where our little farm was in Europe, in Slovakia. Laid down, kids came. He literally passed away, and the kids started having this little funeral for him. And it was, for me, when my grandmother would tell, and I'd be like looking at my mom, and she'd be like, yeah, this kind of happened. It really, for me, other than it being the story that Baba, my grandmother, spun at the kitchen table or told other people, and also practiced, which I guess you would call today Wicca, with certain spells and magic and things like that, was really what made me start looking around and listening and seeing and feeling and thinking about things a little differently. Not only that, prior to me being born, just a couple years before me being born, my entire family had a mass UFO experience where this thing landed between our barn and our house. And it was reported by the David Dunlop Observatory in the Buttonville Airport where we grew up that they were tracking unidentified flying objects. And lo and behold, my mom saw this thing, my whole family saw it. It was vibrating the windows in the house. You could look at it. It was so bright, but it didn't cast any light or any shadows off of anything, because it was sort of in the evening in the late October, early November, I think. That was another one of those, well, hey, what's going on here? There's something bigger. And we're part of something way bigger than we understand. All of that and those baseline stories were for me, what I guess created that heightened sense of awareness. And music, as we were talking off air, has that sort of connection to with writing. You're a writer yourself, Ira, and you were mentioning the stream of consciousness. It's where that kind of information, the Akashic records or whatever it is that is continually filling that envelope can be accessed. And or it sometimes comes without warning.
Yes,
you're you start getting the stuff and you're scribble, and before you know it, you're like, well, wait a minute, who's kind of writing this? I know I'm feeling these things, but the way that it's coming out in articulation through the stream of consciousness, and you go back like we were talking, and you edit yourself and do whatever. Maybe sometimes you don't. Sometimes there's stuff there you just go, whoa, I couldn't have written that if I sat and thought about it. You start going, well, wait a minute, there's a bigger picture here. There's something else that's like that. I think a lot of musicians that I know, and it's like people that listen to paranormal shows like this and other shows late at night. You're coming home from a gig or something, and we're kind of attuned to that stuff. You're also in that rhythm past the circadian time. When the witching hour, if you will, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning is around, there's a different kind of energy that the planet on a subtle energy level is giving off. So for me, that attenuation to the paranormal is there as a result, I think, of even the practice of music, because you're opening yourself to it.
I don't disagree with that at all. When you were mentioning about the boy that died, it reminded me of my own grandmother. She always said, she knew when she was going to die. She always said, it's going to be when she's old and she's going to be going out the same way that she came in, naked and wet. And lo and behold, when she died when she was getting out of the shower. She just dropped dead as soon as she stepped out of the shower before she even dried herself off. So she definitely was there with it. You know, she foresaw everything. It's funny because you mentioned that he was able to talk like as soon as he came out, and one thing that I've always found interesting, my wife is somebody who's got a very good memory, and she had a near-death experience as well, so I kind of wonder sometimes if her memory is tweaked in a weird way to be able to remember things because of that. But what she says is that when she thinks about it, she remembers when she was a baby, you know, still in diapers, not able to actually talk. She remembers thinking in full sentences, full coherent sentences. And then when she was trying to talk, she actually got herself frustrated because all that came out was blah, you know, but she knew what she was thinking, you know, and knew what she wanted to say. It just didn't come out that way. So it's weird how I really do think that there are, that is a reality, you know, that we're sort of born with the abilities already there. It's just a matter of our bodies catching up, and maybe sometimes, like what you were trying to say there, it's already there, even, you know, for whatever the maturity happened a lot faster than normal or something.
Well, that's right, and I think some people have said, you know, like and some people argue it's a yes or it's a no, but I'm kind of a firm believer in the sort of the 100th monkey effect.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that inside of this observation, if the folks don't know, that about every 100th monkey, that monkey would learn a new trait. And instead of showing it, you know, tactically to the other apes, it would then become inherent in the next born child from that ape, so that that is literally now built into the mechanism of what that individual is.
It entered right into the consciousness of the species from that point. Yep.
Bingo. So, and I think that's the same thing when you're talking about your friend and remembering back to that moment in time. I'm like, I have really early memories, visual memories, you know, from being in diapers. And I think, you know, with the photographic memory factor, that's the other thing is like about myself, I'm a dyslexic. And the learning disability that I struggled with for so long kind of forced me into a different way of remembering and thinking about stuff, because if people don't know, dyslexics, when they're reading something, it's a struggle to pronounce the word. It then becomes sort of, that's a problem with comprehension the first time you read the word. Then you struggle to figure out the word the second time, and then that's fixing the problem. And then the third time that you read it, it becomes comprehension. So what you kind of do is, because you have to do things 3 or 4 times over, you remember or memorize things in certain ways. And that's the other thing about certain, like, people, like, they look at Einstein's brain and other things like this. This palate that's inside of the brain near the pineal gland is usually enlarged in some kind of a way, where they have this kind of higher connection. People don't know the pineal gland, close to the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus in the center of the brain, is highly responsible for that intuition-like esque expression that the brain has. This is why they call it really the third eye.
Yep.
And even in Hindu culture and Indian culture, the bindi is a sign of that reckoning or coming of age, of realization. So, you know, I think that we all have this potential. It's just how we are exposed to it that allows it to flourish.
I agree there. I think that, you know, nobody is really special. There's not really anything special about people that are able to see ghosts or hear voices or you know, be creative kind of people or things along those lines. They're not really special. It's just, you know, their minds have been tweaked in one way or another to have access to those things a little bit better than other people. But other people have the ability to do that if they applied themselves to learn how to do it themselves.
Well, hey, you know what? And Chip Coffey, great physical medium, he's one of those proponents, too, where he was working with a lot of kids for the longest time. Like a good physical medium, they'll realize, hey, you kind of have this ability, and with the right nurturing, you know, and it might be harder for an adult. I like to watch Amy Allen sometimes, and she'll say, you know, to an adult, well, you have these abilities. This is why you're having these spiritual connections. And at that point as an adult, it may be a little harder than it is for a younger kid who's far more open at that time and less conditioned to be able to understand what's really going on in that spiritual environment.
That's it right there. It's the conditioning. You know, when you have belief systems that are put into place, there's a filter that's there in the mind that says, no, this isn't real, this isn't happening. So even if it is happening, you know, I think this is odd, and I'm going to talk about something that I don't really talk about very often, but I think really when it comes down to it, everybody experiences the paranormal. It's just that the mind, like for instance, unless you really think about it, unless you really are drawn attention to it, your nose is always in your vision, but your brain writes it out. It forgets about it. It doesn't make you pay attention to it. So you don't even realize that it's there. You're seeing past it, and it's sort of erased from your visual spectrum because your brain considers it not important or not critical to survival at that moment in time. And I think the same kind of thing happens with the paranormal. I think that our belief systems, our ways that we're have learned to behave and learned to accept the reality that we're in, we might be seeing these things, we might be hearing these things, or whatever the case may be, but our brain is out, writing it out of our actual perception experience because either, I don't know, maybe it'll interfere and cause cognitive dissonance to occur if you were to see something, for instance, if you have the belief system that says, if I see this thing, that's of the devil, and on and on and on, so, there's a cognitive dissonance that might be taking place. So your brain says, well, I'm not even going to acknowledge that is happening. I'm not even going to acknowledge that is, currently occurring. So you don't even notice. What do you think about that? Does that make sense to you?
No, absolutely. And your statement is beautifully said and has so much gravity and humor. And the reality of it is it's true. We have that Vulcan-like, logic. This is not pragmatic. We're just keep going. No. Oh, it's just a house settling. It's whatever it is that we use to dismiss the events. And what I always say to people, well, inside of that, you have to look at coincidence. But they're like, well, that's a coincidence. But if you talk to a police officer, they'll say, well, if we have a coincidence in a murder investigation, we follow it's called a lead.
Yes.
and for me, when I have multiples of those coincidences occurring inside of like minutes, I go, okay, wait a minute. There's something else showing itself. It's this, it's that, it's the other thing. Sometimes it takes a while. It could take a year or longer before you realize, oh, that's what it was supposed to be. The important thing, I think, about that part of the spiritual, let's say, mind, is that it keeps going back to that event. It keeps looking at it in different perspectives. Not to try to rationalize it for itself to say, yes, it was a ghost, yes, it was this, but to keep questioning it and to keep asking yourself, why did this happen? What was about this? Because it may not be clear right away. Other times, there's like, boom, it's obvious why it's occurring, and you're getting the message for a certain reason. And usually it's pretty prolific, or like we were talking before off air, there's this affirmation that occurs through it, and then you go, well, hey, those stories that I heard from Jim, Mary, or Bill, they're probably right, because they are uniquely their experiences, but at the same time, they're able to articulate them and rationalize how it isn't that it is something that you can just dismiss. It is actually something that is strange that has occurred, and for them, and that reason, maybe alone. But the important thing is that we share them, because that way other people start to look at what you call before dismissing it in a completely different way. They'd be like, well, maybe, but hey, wait, and then the connections start to ensue.
I think, people are ready to hear certain information at certain times, and the info that you get is always kicking around in your brain somewhere. It's always rattling around in your subconscious somewhere, but you may not have been ready to hear it at that moment, or you may not have been ready to see it at that moment, as the case may be, as far as the spirit realm is concerned. But that info is still there, and there are moments in time, I think, where we sort of have agreed maybe ahead of time that at this point in time, this is where I want to learn this lesson, or I want to understand that there's something bigger than myself, or that there's a reality that's different than what I've established. And so until that moment comes, you could hear all of this stuff all you want. You could read as many paranormal stories or UFO stories, or I don't know, government cover-ups, or whatever the case may be, go on down the line of things. But until you're actually ready to hear it, until that moment in time comes where you're open and receptive to it, it doesn't matter how many times you hear it, it's never going to actually enter your brain.
Right, and you're completely right. I think that there are these give and takes and pushes and pulls in it. And what I mean by that, I guess, okay, from my experience, a couple stories. One, in 92, my dad passed away. Well, in 2002, I bought a farm. Come from a farming family. Been farming now for many years. Love food and agriculture, always talking about it. When I bought this place, I'm talking to my oldest friend, okay, and we've known each other since we're 4. He's in Germany now. And I'm making toast, okay, and all of a sudden, I can smell my dad. Everything. The barn, his aftershave, cologne, whatever, his shaving cream, his B.O., man, okay? And I lose it. I start crying. And my buddy's like, Tobias is like, what's wrong, man? I'm like, my dad's here. He's like, your dad. And immediately he knew. And we both went, he's so happy for you. You know, like that kind of like that tradition of farming and agriculture and the thinking the way that we do in my family, I'm now doing. And of all the things, Ira, that he could have shown himself to me with, it wasn't a vision, a vapor, it wasn't something being displaced. It was smell, and here's the connection. My dad was knighted in France, in Burgundy, because his ability to smell was so intense that the French said, give this man a knighthood. Okay?
Wow.
And he could smell like carrots through, you know, a lead wall. Okay? He was so how does he, and it took me a while, it was like months till later, because it happened to me, and the smell is what triggered it, and it was so intense. I just was like, that's what it was. Of all the things he could have done, it was smell. You know, like it wasn't anything else.
Right.
And for me, it was like elation, a sorrow all wrapped up in adulation, into realization, into like happiness, and it was like almost like it was a chemical spiritual epiphany, and I couldn't control it. And it didn't happen years before that when I was living in the city. It didn't happen when I was doing other things, but it happened at the moment that I got the farm.
Which right there is your correlation. Right there is your correlation. It's no coincidence.
Right. And then I know it sounds crazy. I got some trifactors going on in my paranormal world, but I've had a Bigfoot experience in my life. And with that said, talking to people in the Aboriginal community and hearing other things from people that have studied this in the Aboriginal community, that it's one of those things that you're meant to have happen to you now for a certain reason. And the other researchers that I've heard too, like Jeff Meldrum and other people that are seriously doing like good biological research on this kind of phenomenon, you know, they've said the same thing. Aboriginals will say to them, you don't go find them, they find you.
That's it, exactly.
They find you for a reason, right?
That's it, exactly.
So I get it. Your statement before is so true. There's a reason things happen to you at certain moments in time. And it's when you pay attention that the real learning experience occurs.
Yep, exactly. And, you know, I'm Native myself, so I kind of take that from from my own experiences with my elders. You know, they have sort of ingrained that into the head too. You know, you were mentioning with your father and the experience that you had with him. I have an experience of my own with my father, but it's sort of in a weird way. My son, he's severely autistic, and one of the interesting things that has happened is my father has come to sort of stand guard over him. And I know that he's here, but he doesn't really show himself to me. He never really has. But I know that he's here. I can feel his energy. You know, you know when your father is there, right? He's had communications with my son, Seth, many times. And when my son told me that he had made a friend, I started asking him what's all this about, you know, and asked his description, so on and so forth. The person that he described is exactly the same as my father. And the weird thing with it is that when I asked him the name, like if he's told him the name, he said, yeah, he's my Uncle Ted. Now my dad's name was Ted, and why he calls him Uncle Ted, I'm not sure, but maybe he's getting things a little bit confused in his brain as far as, everybody basically is uncle or aunt, to him. So, but it's interesting because I know that he's here and I know he's having these interactions with my son, and he's here, I think, for guardianship, to watch over him because he's got all of these issues that are going on with him.
Wow, but you now really piqued my curiosity. Do you have a cousin or a brother or that has passed away?
I have a brother and also many cousins that have passed away, yeah.
A brother that has passed away?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and cousins that have passed away. That could possibly mean that your son, who's definitely, you said is autistic, is definitely prone to connective spiritual activity.
Yes.
And many spiritual beings will tell you that. And he could be saying that because he could be a reincarnate of one of your family members.
See, I've often thought exactly that. That's definitely not a new thought as far as my brain goes. I've thought many times. I firmly believe that this is not the first time we're here. It's certainly not going to be the last time that we're here. We're here over and over again for, many different reasons. And I think that when we're here, we're always interacting with the same sort of group of beings every time, but you're in different positions each time. I always liken it to a stage play. We're actors that are on a stage and we're playing a part, but we're not that part. We're not John, the wheelman or whatever that's on the stage. No, we're just the actor that's there on the stage playing the part. And I think that because of the way that we perceive reality around us, we forget that we're playing a part. But I think that amnesia is intentional to allow us to always experience new things,
Well, and consequence and how it reacts, if you believe in the butterfly effect or chaos theory.
Oh, yeah.
The most simplistic actions that we have can have an immense impact, and we don't even realize it. I mean, look at a prime example is searching or finding Sugar Man. That wonderful documentary about the musician. He had a career. He was signed. They put a record together. He was sort of a Bob Dylan-esque contemporary, Spanish-American, but then it doesn't go anywhere. Goes and lives his life, raises a couple kids, works as a guy, gutting houses and ripping out stuff for contractors. Well, the movie is basically about a tune and tunes that he wrote from a record that were huge in Africa for 30 years. And they were apartheid numbers, and they were like liberation songs. And somewhere, and you find out through the documentary, unfortunately, other people had capitalized off of it. But the inertia behind why he wrote songs to connect people, to bring this sense of peace and happiness through this musical movement that was going on, worked. He didn't know it was working. It took 35 years after the fact. But the consequence of those simple songs that he wrote, empowered an entire group of people in Africa during that movement. And he wasn't even aware of it. So I think that's the thing. We're so in the matrix of everything, we forget that we're in this, like Chopper says, the experiencer inside the experiencing. But the things that we create then also become a part of that experience that other people experience. It becomes the drop in the pool scenario with the two stones. Ira's on one side of the pond. I'm on the other side of the pond. It's still. Ira throws his rock, I throw my rock. We each make ripples, but then Ed and Ira's ripples meet each other and create new ripples.
Exactly.
And this is always going on everywhere. And that's the important.
Well, I was just going to say, to go along with what you're saying there, one of the things that I talk about very frequently on this show is how we're all very intimately connected together, energetically speaking. I mean, when it comes down to it, that's all that we really are. We're just energy. We're just, vibrations and energy. The desk that I'm sitting at is not real. The microphone I'm talking into is not real. They're made up of atoms. And when you break it down even further into the quantum level, nothing exists until it exists, right? So, all potentials exist at every moment in time until a decision is made or until something is observed, and then boom, it pops into reality. And it's still just a matter of perception of the consciousness of our brains. But when it really comes down to everything, what we can liken ourselves to is sort of like strings on a piano, and when you pluck one of the strings, it creates that vibration. You know, it vibrates back and forth across the string and down to the end and back again, and that's what makes the tone. I mean, you're a musician, you know this intimately, but you know, not only though is that happening, but also all the strings around it are vibrating in sympathetic harmony with that plucked string, and that's really the impetus of what we really are. Every time that we have a thought or an action, or we commit a deed or anything like that, everything that's around us is now vibrating at that same frequency. You know, it's sort of vibrating in response to that we're sending out.
Beautifully said. And Ravi Shankar, on that same note, would say that every note that has ever been played, it vibrates forever. Even the instrument that Ravi played, and I've got one here, the sitar, is based on this sort of transcendental. You've got 7 playable strings. They're tuned in cycle of fourths, but you've also got the sympathetic strings, 21 of them, that are ringing underneath, that are part of that vibratory orchestra, even though they're not being plucked.
Yeah,
they're actually being vibrated by the music that's being touched by the hand. So you've come 100% right.
Well, let's go ahead and hit a break here. When we come back, we'll get more into this. We'll get in more into your own paranormal experiences. And this has been a really fascinating conversation even so far. I love it. I'm so grateful for you coming on with us tonight and talking about all of this stuff.
Absolute pleasure, Ira. It's great to be here, my friend.
All righty. Well, if you guys want to call in tonight, you can do so. The number is 260-494-3937. Our Skype line is JDA Film. As always, we're over in the chat room at LNMRadioNetwork.com. Make sure you guys stay tuned. There's a whole lot more coming up for y'all. So, yeah, this is just, I always have fun with these kind of topics. We'll be right back, folks. Available now, Troll Spray. Do you have problems with trolls? Do you constantly find yourself turning on the light of truth and find they come out of the woodwork after you? Give your trolls a quick squirt of Troll Spray and you'll be amazed at how quickly they flee. Troll Spray has been tested on all of the different types of trolls, shills, false prophets, doomsayers, sock puppets, and of course, those ever fearsome hostile radio show hosts. It works on them all. Get Troll Spray today, available only at LNM Radio Network. Spray the trolls away with Troll Spray.
There are days that the red pill is bitter in my stomach, but I can't get it back out. I think because I have to. I speak because I have no choice. I walk through this dark age we're in with open eyes. Listen to Open Eyes on LateNightInTheMidlands.com. And together, maybe we won't stumble and fall.
Do you need toner for your Epson, Hewlett-Packard, Canon, Brother, Apple, or Sharp printers? Look no further than Laser Technologies. In business for over 20 years, they offer the lowest prices on toner on the web. They can also repair your laser printers and toners fast and easy. Call their expert staff today at 561-792-9600 or email us at service@laser-technologies.com for all your toner needs. All toner is shipped nationwide. Why wait? Get the lowest prices on toner. Call or email us today.
Are you tired of going from breakup to breakup, constantly finding yourself filled with hope that just maybe this time would be different? Have you found that you just cannot get yourself away from that one type of person that you know is the worst person for you to be with? Do you want to find the perfect relationship for yourself, one that will not leave you like all the others, heartbroken, lost, and utterly alone? Then this book is exactly what you're looking for. There are many things that can go wrong in a relationship, some of which are beyond your control. Sometimes, it seems that no matter how hard you try, you always end up going through yet another breakup, yet another struggle to pick up the pieces and move on with life, and yet another round of explaining to your friends and family why it had to end. Are you ready to make a change?
When Good Relationships Go Bad will help you find the core reason why you cannot find the right relationship for you. It will help you discover how you can break out of the cycle of going from bad relationship to bad relationship. It will help you finally, once and for all, learn how to control the way your heart and mind interact, and not be constantly led to those you desire the least, and yet still end up with. It will help you find out how people just like you have already overcome the struggle to find their perfect someone, and how you can do it too. Is it really possible to end the battle with yourself and finally be able to find the one for you? Until now, you've gone through the pain of love and loss, and have perhaps even given up hope of ever finding that one that is right for you. With When Good Relationships Go Bad, How to Break the Cycle and Find Your Perfect Relationship, you can discover how to have the strength to carry on, end the ache, and find that person meant for you. When Good Relationships Go Bad by Ira Robinson. Find it and all of his other books at his website, originalworlds.com. That's originalworlds.com. You can also find it at every major bookstore, including Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
The LNM Radio Network and Late Night in the Midlands depends on you, the listener. Without you, there would be no us. So help us continue to bring you the best guests with the best information, and subscribe today. Information on becoming an LNM subscriber can be found at the top of LateNightInTheMidlands.com. Just click the About Subscriptions tab and become part of the family while helping the truth stay alive. And while you're at it, maybe subscriptions aren't for you. A one-time donation helps as well. Click that donate button on the right side of LateNightInTheMidlands.com and help us help you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Open Eyes. My name is Ira Robinson. Tonight we're here with Ed Roman, and hopefully you guys are enjoying the show so far tonight. I know I am for sure. If you guys want to call in, the number is 260-494-3937. Skype line is JDA Film, and as always, we're over in the chat room at LNMRadioNetwork.com. Come on over, join in with the community, have a little bit of fun. It's always an interesting conversation happening over there, and a lot of fun, good times. Even if it does devolve into talk about food a lot. Just the way that it always goes. Anyways, Ed, we are back, and I want to thank you for sticking around through the break there. Before we hit the break, we were talking about some of the paranormal experiences and why it happens. And one of the things I did in my book, Haunted, Finding an Explanation for the Unknown, is I talk about how there's differences between the actual spirit hauntings that people have and what I term sort of a replay situation, where there's the same cycle of events happening over and over instead of it being an actual spirit. And I think that most people, when they have paranormal experiences, it sort of involves that replay situation as opposed to being an actual spirit. What do you think about that?
100%. And I think that aside from even just those two, there are probably many, and two of which right away off the top. I mean, a location, a home, can itself attract, like a person, be a magnet for other spirits that have had other events, spirits that are now moving in transit and are drawn to those particular locations. I've seen a number of times in investigations, virtual medium is basically like looking at the location and they're like, And when the investigative work is done later on, they determine this person actually, died about 1.5 miles from here, and this is probably who's actually haunting this location, your family, and or what's going on at that space.
Absolutely,
and then
yes.
The land itself then, too, and even this is where the Aboriginal community comes in, they will either not use the land because there is something dimensional and or I don't want to hazard to say something that's demon-like or trickster or bad spirit related, that it's not used, or it's ceremonial for certain reasons, and to desecrate it in such a way, or it's burial and to desecrate it in such a way is going to make it not good. So, like you said, sometimes that stain in an area can be left there, and it keeps repeating itself over and over again, whereas other things with mediums and other people that are actually interreacting with the spirit in the house, or it's trying to get their attention, like you said so before beautifully, it's trying to tell its story. It's trying to explain what happened, and in some cases they may not even know yet.
Exactly. Yes. When it comes down to these things, I call them energy vortexes myself. They're these places of energy where it's gathered together in one reason or another. A lot of times when events occur, like let's say for instance, there's a family that's there. There's a mother and a father and a couple of kids, and the father maybe during the process of them living there loses his job. And, can't find another job, is having trouble with it, maybe falls into alcoholism, gets into depression. His wife is complaining because the bills are stacking up and the daughter needs the new braces, and on and on and on. And he comes home one day and he finds the wife in bed with the neighbor, and he ends up killing both of them. Well, that event leaves an indelible mark on that spot. It's a kink in reality, so to speak, that's placed there. And, from that point forward, the energy of that event, the energy of that thing creates this energy vortex, so that anybody who goes into it then will end up being exposed to it. Now, one of the things that I've found in my own experiences with this stuff is that, let's say, for example, another family moves in and it's just a man and a woman. They might not experience anything paranormal because they don't closely match as a key that play button or the event that took place there, so they may not experience anything. But then another family that moves in that's more close to the makeup of that original one, they're probably going to start experiencing problems, up to and including the father starting in a cascade of depression for no reason, because it's actually changing the consciousness of the people that are living there. It's changing the patterns of who they are.
Completely, and those are usually the ones that have more potential for psychic ability, and are manipulated, don't know it because they're uneducated. And like you said, the incident happens, the affair ensues, husband comes home, kills in a rage. That may have been triggered by a previous incident that was already similar.
That's it, exactly.
To that, and it's feeding itself again, and it's even creating a PK manifestation of something that's actually now starting to live and become something that's because of that moment or original incident that occurred. And when you're talking about these areas that are vortexes, I mean, I think geomancy and the idea of, what people were into about sacred places, there's a reason behind that. Even great confluences of rivers in the Aboriginal communities all over, even here in Canada, they're sacred places for a reason, because they have that subtle energy electrical current where a phenomenon can occur where we can interact with those dimensions on our plane and slipping almost back and forth between it. This is another reason why I think other people see things, they go, well, that doesn't exist, it couldn't be there, but there could be a reason why that exists there, and it's only coming and slipping in and out of those areas. And it's funny because they already know, like on a physics level and what's going on a dimensional level in the universe, that there are multi-planes, 13 or more, that are out there. So then why would it not be symmetrical in thinking about it in the spiritual world?
Exactly. And you mentioned about the spirits coming in and out, and one of the things I've experienced with everything is they absolutely do move. I mean, they're people, they're just like us. They're not stuck in one singular place. They can go wherever they please. They might just prefer to be in the place that they know, sort of like, well, you like to live in your house. It's a familiar place, and so you hang out there, but you'll still go out to eat. You'll still go visit friends. And I think one mistake is, I see a lot of people picking up on these the patterns of the ghost shows, the investigation shows, and that kind of thing, where they'll have people walk in and they start getting, really violent, angry, and screaming and hollering at the spirits and stuff. And I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, that is the best, fastest way to become haunted, my friend. You really need to stop doing that, because they will follow you home.
And Elaine Warren, she's a great American spiritual medium. She's been advising people for so many. She's the first person to say, you just don't do that. Like, it'd be like to say, hey, Ira, let's come on. You see that wasp nest over there? Let's go shake it.
Let's go beat it up.
See what happens. No, I wouldn't like it if a bunch of people came up to me and started yelling and shaking me.
Exactly.
So, why would it be any different?
Exactly. I'm not going to walk into somebody's home and start, you effing blah, 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 blah. No, because I'm getting tossed out.
Why don't you come out of that kitchen and get us?
It's just a really foolish thing to do, and I think that shows like the lack of experience and the lack of real understanding about how this stuff actually works. They seem to find the people that want to sensationalize it more than actually doing any kind of serious investigations with stuff. It really annoys me, and I know I'm not alone in that thought.
Myself included, and a lot of other people I know too are in the same boat. And I've seen some of them go from that and curtailing, their aggressiveness when it comes to that, because they've been told. They were like, you shouldn't even do this, by like shaman, priests, mediums. Other people are like, you just don't do that. And yeah, TV loves to get a hold of everything and just shake it in a bottle, right?
They do indeed.
Let's see if it pops.
They do indeed. With all of the stuff that's going on, one of the things that I've put forward, and I'd love to get your thoughts with this, because I'm loving your thoughts as far as consciousness and the interactions of people and vibrations and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that I think we see happening right now, there's so many people that are filled with negativity and filled with hatred and anger with each other, and it's a really sad situation that we're in. I think there's a various amount of reasons why it's happening, but one of the effects of it, I think, is we're actually seeing like real world reactions occurring. So for instance, we had these two really big hurricanes that happened, that are sort of record breaking hurricanes, and people might say climate change, but I also look at it as this is sort of a harmonic response to the energy that we as people, in general, the masses are putting outward as well. What are your thoughts with that?
I agree. I think, again, with the butterfly effect and everything we were talking about, every action has some sort of a equal reaction. So when this is the thing about media and the news that always drives me crazy, and I'm sure conspiracy theorists will love to go down every road that they can with this, but it's on. The fight or flight button mechanism is always being pushed.
Yeah.
And it's an unhealthy thing. Information and the information age is incredible, Ira, but at the same time, what's dangerous about it is it defocuses us. But when the sort of red light goes on, all of that energy, negative energy, is focused in that negative way. And I don't know, sometimes I sit and think to myself, is it by design, Is it, the news media is trying to make money. I know they're trying to play people against one another. Yeah. There's so many dogmatic practices all over the world, whether it's politics, socio-political stuff, religion. They're always in this sort of state of flux. This is why I identify more with Aboriginal cultures, because they seem to be far more connected to the Gaia-esque, Earth-like, we live here together, and it's not about the separation and the division. It's about how we work together. So I think that that's the most important thing, is to keep focusing on the kinetic factor of what am I doing in my own backyard, neighborhood, community. Because once you do that, like good public service, and I don't want to use the word politics, it will work its way up the chain of command until it weeds out the negativity of the figureheads at the top.
I'm so glad that you said it.
That's where all the good stuff is happening.
I'm so glad that you said that.
Kids are down there going to school. They're interacting with one another. People are working. They're having their lives. They're doing different things. That's exactly where those missions, personal missions, that become kinetic change. Because once one community hears about it and they think, wow, we could do that. Boom, all of a sudden, other people start doing it. It's like, well, this is working. This makes sense. Let's keep doing it.
Goes back to the 100th monkey syndrome.
I think that's the most important thing. There needs to be more special interest shows, just even like this, that are talking about that kind of stuff, because it makes people shut off the television and cut the umbilical cord and get outside and start doing some positive things in their communities.
It goes back to that 100th monkey syndrome idea. When you're making a change, and it's a consciousness changer all around. When you're doing those little things. I always look at the leaders as being a mirror reflection of ourselves. If they're acting corrupt and lying and cheating and stealing while they're in power, they're reflecting what the general population sort of has in their own lives. They're lying or they're cheating. They've got cheating going on with their wives or their husbands, or they're lying to each other, or lying in business, and so on and so forth. If they're acting corrupt, the politicians, the leaders, quote unquote, are also going to be corrupt, because they're reflecting back so that we can see how we really are. And I think that's, energetically speaking, why we see that kind of thing occurring. If we weren't acting that way in our own lives, we would not tolerate leaders that are that way either.
Right. And I think that's true. It is very kinetic that way. And it is a reflection. And my dad, who was, a public servant, I'll say the word politician, first federal coalition candidate ever in the history of Canadian federal politics, mayor of our township for over 30 years, police commissioner, chairman of York Region. He basically said the public gets what it deserves. If you don't get involved in public service and politics and what's going on around you, you're going to end up with the wrong kind of people running the show. They are supposed to be representations of your voice. So what you're saying has a lot of truth to it. It's reacting to the way the public seems to be. But feeding it, being a good leader, means knowing your strength comes from everything around you, every person around you, every organization around you. Even though there may be differences in opinion, all those things are the things that actually creates the strength. A good leader knows that. They don't take the responsibility. They don't keep amplifying their ego. They don't keep showing people what it is that they do. They get down to business and they do it, and they utilize their resources, which are the people around them, because that's what's really running the show.
Exactly.
That's what's really making everything work. And the news media loves. What I've learned to do in the last number of years is, because I'm very attuned to sociopolitics, is that I check in. I go, BBC, CNN, Fox, CTV, CBC, HLN. I go through CPAC. Then I go to social media. I look for the public opinion. I see what public, and I look for differences even between social media journalism and what goes on television. And then I go to other, talk boards to see what other people's opinions are. And what's great about the information age is, as opposed to it just being what you see right away, you can start to now navigate yourself and in a way get through the quagmire of what's kind of really going on. To say, well, hey, you know what, that is a bad idea, but I'm not going to let it ruin my day, and tomorrow things are going to be different.
I look at things like this. We're not guaranteed to take another breath. We have this moment in time, and that's it. What are we doing with it? We can say that we're going to make a change tomorrow, or we can say that things are going to be different in a year. But what are we doing in this moment in time to make that happen? Are you helping those around you? Are you being compassionate? Are you being loving, or anything along those lines? Or are you in your life doing these corrupt actions, or again, lying, cheating, stealing, whatever the case may be? Because that's the legacy that you're leaving. And again, you're not guaranteed to take another breath. So what do you want your legacy to be,
What your hands do, your own eyes have seen.
Yep.
So won't you judge your actions to make sure the results are clean?
There you go. Exactly.
And that's an old reggae tune. And it's true. I mean, but that's the thing. How do we consciously perceive ourselves in our experiences. We're so defocused by so many different things, whether it would be the media we were just talking about, but man, walk outside your door, drive down a road between billboards, running television sets on the street, and stores and advertisement. I mean, it's pretty hard to kind of find that quiet moment. This is one of the reasons why I love gardening, because, again, it separates me from that, machine and gets me back into that, like, okay, I'm listening to my plants right now.
Speaking of that, I think that plants are absolutely conscious. I think they're possibly even more conscious than we are, considering that when you get down to the brass tacks of it, they're interconnected in ways that we never could be. They're connected together with each other through their root systems. And so one tree is not actually that one tree. It might be 1,000 trees that are surrounding it,
Right. We had a textbook in grade school. It's called The Interdependence of All Living Things. And it talked about just that. It talked about it on a bigger scale, not maybe so much like scientifically cause and effect, like the Baxter experiments or something like that. But, everything in some way goes through that cycle, the circle of life, Hakuna Matata, whatever. There's that whole thing always kind of going on that's living and feeding off of itself in that beautiful balance. But you're right. Like, I met this wonderful gentleman through a friend of mine in the city. He's an editor of Tesla magazine. And Bob had called me one day, and he said, look, I'm looking for a studio. My recording studio's up way up in the country on a farm. And it doesn't have a lot of Wi-Fi and a lot of EMF and just a lot of interference, because I want to conduct these experiments. And I want to film it as part of this thing that we do every year at the Ontario Science Center. And it's for Tesla's birthday, and he talk about Tesla for a couple hours, and it's really cool. So he brings these plants up, and he hooks the polygraph tabs up to the plants. And the polygraph tabs are going into this, like, A to D converter, audio to digital converter, folks. And then from that, it's hooked up to a synthesizer, and you can access all kinds of different sounds. But what Bob had me do, Bob McConnell's his name, I played, and I was playing a bunch of different instruments. And what would happen was the plants at first would be confused trying to find the right notes. But then they would find the right key. And then they would start rhythmically then, with whatever I was doing, whatever tempo, start rhythmically following me. And if I stopped, the plants would still do it a little bit, but then they kind of slow down. But then they'd start their own thing. And I'd start playing with the plants. And it was this sort of like crazy symphony like going on. It was kind of gobbledygook, but it was more based on interreaction than it being like something literally that was written down. And I thought, well, maybe, it's like, my instruments are triggering the polygraph tabs or something like that. And he said, no, just take off your guitar for a second. And he had these huge crystals that he pulled out of this crazy doctor's bag. And he said, these are charged crystals that I've had in the sun for a couple of days. And he said, now, instead of playing your instrument, hold them, but pretend that the crystals are your instrument. And you're thinking and feeling the sounds in your head. Like, think of a tune maybe that you'd go through, or that kind of a thing. And I would do this, and the plants would then start kind of doing this with me without me, and I lost it. I was like, this sort of proves to me even the relationship that I have with my gardening. And I know it sounds crazy. I don't like sit there going, hey, Jim the pepper, how are you today, Mary the tomato? It's just this sort of subtle feeling that you get from, like, you look at a plant and you go, even before something's wrong with it or it needs something, you're already getting the information from it. And you do it ahead of time. It's not like, well, yeah, it's Thursday, I got to water, because anything can happen outside. But you kind of are already instinctually getting that, the pepper's going, hey, Ed, I need some water. Can you prune me a couple of my younger peppers so we can get some more flowers going here, and I'll give you some more fruit. All of that becomes a part of that attenuation again. And when Bob was here and we did this, I was like, well, it confirms all of that for me. And my mom was the one who started me into doing that. She's like, yeah, I talk to my plants all the time.
Well, speaking of that, one of the things I've talked about a lot is, how people get lonely, how they feel like they're not worth anything or anything along those lines. Any number of factors that happen in this world that we live in. And I always tell them, one of the best things that you can do is you can go outside to a tree or a plant, and you can, especially a tree, because it's, just so large and, there, you're very aware of it being there. So you can go out to this tree and you can stand right there with it and become consciously aware that as you're breathing out, that tree is breathing in. It's taking in your breath, the breath that you're gifting it with. And in the same moment, when you inhale, you're taking in its breath as well. You're literally there sharing breaths with this creature that has been there maybe even for much longer than you have. It's a gift that you're sharing with each other in that moment. So how really can you feel alone? You're connected so intimately with everything that's around you.
You see, this is why I think Aboriginal community should become more involved with even the elderly communities in because it becomes education and getting away from the conditioning. If you said that to a 50-year-old or a businessman working in an office that was got, psoriasis and freaking out because of stress, because of some huge money thing, and we're like, come on, we're going to go sit under a tree and we're going to talk about breathing. Like, get the hell out of here. I got to make a phone call. They'd be like,
filthy
it's so
tree
hard
hugger.
to break people from that. When I was working at the Pine River Institute doing music therapy, one of the first things that we did, even before the kids came through their 5-stage program, was they had to go to Algonquin Park and detox. But detox not only meant getting them off whatever they were doing, it was away from TV, radio, cell phones, computers, anything that had to relate to the machine. And if they hadn't have done that before they came back to the center, it would have been so much harder to go through stage 1 through 5 as a result, because you're already in that fight mode. You're fighting for the very thing that is actually destroying you.
Yeah, exactly, because you're addicted to it in one way or another.
Right.
It's just as much, of an addiction. To take it on an even bigger scale, you could go outside and stand beneath the stars, at night and look up into the sky and see the stars there. Even with a really heavy light pollution, you can at least still see a few stars. And, you can go outside and you can look at that star and you can think, okay, that's a pretty star. It's nice, whatever, but you can also sort of tweak your thoughts a little bit, transform your thoughts a little bit into this idea that this star may not even exist anymore. It may be so far away and it may have already, given up its life at that point. But that light that's now entering into you, that's a photon of light. That's literally a particle that is existent. And you're now taking that into yourself. That star gave up a part of its being so that you in that moment in time can look at it and take it into yourself. Now you're carrying around that star inside of you. So again, how can you think that you're worthless? How can you think that you're not something absolutely special?
Well, that's just it, and it's the way that we share that information. A lot of times people say to me, Ed, why are you so passionate about these different things? And I guess the biggest thing was going back to family. My dad, mom, grandparents always had this sense of, adventure with whatever they did. Even if it meant taking the garbage out for crying out loud. It was always some sense of victory somehow, or there was some kind of a game, or the imagination in some way was used. And also empowering us at a very young age to be able to do certain things. My mom would take us downtown, and we'd have to come. She'd say, okay, I brought you downtown. Here's $5. Now you have to get me back on the subway, then the bus, and then you have to call for a taxi, and then we're going to go back to the farm. So that was at the age of 5. I was doing this, or my dad would be like, what would be politics talk would be at the dinner table, and I'm 6, and he'd be like, well, what do you think? All of that, bringing that into, what does your mind think? What does your imagination think behind this? This is even what music has been for me on that level, because people say, well, how do you write a song? Well, let your imagination lead you through that process. And your description of the star and being out in the sky and explaining the photons of the dying star, and you're still seeing it, and when you describe it that way, when it's illustrated in that magical kind of way, a lot of times, and it's the right kind of person, that's what makes a good teacher, and why I even love the Aboriginal community. It's like you have a bunch of questions for somebody, and they'll give you an answer that is more like a question, and that thing will keep you thinking for months, if not years, after the fact. That's exciting information and being wielded in an exciting kind of way. And the good teachers that I was lucky enough to have, whether it had been in grade school, high school, family, friends that were like, they were so close we called them uncle or aunt as a result of that. They all had that sense of wonderment about life. And that's, I guess, who I as a person was attracted to. So when I, as a teacher, as an educator like yourself, taught for 25 years, I had a great student body of people, not because I was everybody's best friend, but it's because it's the way I taught the information that made it different. Or I had kids that were going to school that were medicated, and they'd come to my classes, and I'd say, so what's the difference? Why are you not medicated when you come to my class? And then, from the mouths of babes, what's the way you teach the course? Same thing at the Pine River Institute. I have people that had spent more time working as a therapist in the school, outside of the school, in the trade, that would come to me and saying, well, what are you doing here? Because they're obviously paying attention to you. It's not that I'm right or that I want to be right. It's through my experiences and exuberance that's how the information is translated. It's the same thing as and I know I'm going on a bit of a tangent, but in the information age, we will send each other a text. We will send each other an email. There might be an emoticon or an emoji or some kind of a happy face or something attached to it or whatever. But where real learning and education happen is in those electric, kinetic conversations. Because character that is tied to it through the storytelling mechanism is a big part of that excitement. And when it's sterile, stagnant, never changing, because as a teacher, you know as well as I do, nobody learns the same way. You have to come with the information in different ways, multiple times sometimes. It's all a part of that becomes then an art form in itself, a bigger part of the picture. And why I think it's like, it's so much more important to get on a porch with 15 people and talk than to air your opinion in social media.
Exactly. And, when it comes to the internet, I've always said the internet really is an amazing thing. We've got the entirety of human history at our fingertips, literally, because we carry around these, smartphones and so on and so forth. We've got the entirety of human history available at our fingertips, but we spend our time watching, kitten videos and arguing with each other all the time. And it's just sad, you could use the time to really make a difference and learn things that you never had exposure to in any kind of way. We're able to connect with people instantly across the world and understand what's happening to somebody in China when you're in America, and it's an amazing tool. But I think that tool is really being misused. People are really just they're wasting their opportunities with it, I guess you could say.
But you said it, that word tool, beautiful, because I've used it and heard other people say it. It's the same thing. Look, when the advent of the telephone came about, people were like, everybody didn't have one. There may be one in a general store. You could go down the road and use your neighbors or something. But when everybody got a phone, they didn't take it to bed. It wasn't in the car. They weren't like, stepping off of street corners and getting clipped by cars because they were on their phone. It was just a tool. A saw is a tool. Exactly. A hammer is a tool. We haven't realized it. I don't think. We're still so enamored with the complexity of the technology that's really superseded our ability in thinking. Most people can't fix an iPhone or cell phone. But, we had radio and TV and telephone repairmen coming to your houses only 35, 40 years ago, and everything was fixable. You can probably have most phones fixed, but it's probably going to cost you more to have the phone fixed than it would to buy a new one.
Intentional obsolescence, yes, exactly. And now we're also creating artificial intelligences. We're literally creating beings. These are the children of humanity that we're creating, and yet... we're not mature enough to even handle talking to each other. It's
hubris. This is where I think the whole libretto of Star Wars, and I love the film and I love the libretto, is kind of happening. You've got that, archaic, electric, motor-driven, Death Star-like machine culture fighting the ones that are still kind of yet wanting and understanding that, connectiveness to nature and everything that goes on around them, and know that on a spiritual, physical level, there's something more potent and higher that is growing on and suppressing that through that. Although the technology is amazing and wonderful and fantastic, is not necessarily a healthy thing because we're not growing spiritually. You know,
Exactly.
I always remember, I can't remember who the yogi was at Woodstock, and he was like, very recently when I was in the East, the grandson of Mahatma Gandhi comes to me and asks me what's happening in America. And he says, America is helping the whole world with materialism, but the time has come for them to help everybody with spirituality. And that this is a jump yet we haven't made. We've made a jump in our egotism and the things that are material, and the triumph of the ego has been very prevalent for hundreds of years. Megalomania and all that other stuff. What we haven't yet done, we've only seen punctuations of those things in the last couple hundred years with Gandhi and other people that have those mechanisms of, wait a minute, there's something higher here, and you need to focus on it. You get slapped in the face, ask for another slap.
Exactly. And those things get lost in translation sometimes because of that language difference that's there. You know, people don't really understand the nuances of language when it comes to that stuff. Ed, we do need to take a break here real quick. When we come back, we'll get more into it. I know that we've got a couple of people that have wanted to call in as well. So if you guys want to call in, 260-494-3937 is the call-in number. This has really been a great conversation. I love this guy. He's amazing. We're going to play a little bit of his music as well during this break. So make sure you guys listen and go buy his albums. edroman.net is his web address, and we'll make sure that he gives out his information here later on as well. So stick around. 260-494-3937. We'll be back in just a few minutes, folks. Ben Franklin said, "If you do the same thing tomorrow as you did today, you're going to get the same tomorrow as you got today." Changing the world starts with you, and changing you starts with changing the way you think. Late Night in the Midlands can help. Listen to all of our shows at latenightinthemidlands.com, because things really do need to change.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Fear. There is always so much to fear. So many shadows are just waiting for the moment for when we pay no attention at all. Just waiting for the moment when they can grab us and make us come undone. Fear takes, and fear gives nothing in return. But there is one gift in this life that fear is afraid of. The gift of love. Reach out for someone today. Fear nothing, for fear is nothing. Live hard. You've reached the LNM Support Group hotline. If you've been rejected from LNM Radio Network as a guest for making dumb statements, please press 1. If you've been exposed as a shill on the LNM Radio Network, please press 2. If you believe what the mainstream media tells you instead of the LNM Radio Network, please press 3. If you've been triggered by something you've heard on the LNM Radio Network, after the beep, please leave your name and address, and our Puppy Power team will immediately send out your Cocoa Puppy Care package. Group meetings take place each Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. Please bring your own blanket and one for a friend. Diapers will be provided, and our Puppy Power team will assist your changing needs. This group is open to everyone who has been rejected, cannot act like an adult, or have an unhealthy obsession with fidget spinners. Coloring books will be passed out at the door. If your parents have cut you off from your college tuition for being a whiny noodle, our Kit and Caboodle team will come to your door to help you smile again. Ramen will be provided as well. The LNM Radio Network Support Group hotline is here for you. Please let your friends know they can call 1-645-536-6425 That's one millennial.
If there's more than one millennial, do not be triggered by the number. LNM Radio Network support group may cause uncontrollable crying, zombie-like effects such as walking off cliffs while looking at your phone, or an inability to deal with others or reality. The LNM Radio Network support group hotline is not for everyone. If you are awake, aware of reality, aware the mainstream media is full of bias, understand the alternative media is just as filled with bias and lies, know the truth about 9/11, aliens, the paranormal, and Bigfoot, and the way the medical, pharmaceutical, military, industrial complex controls everything, do not call this number. The LNM Radio Network support group hotline may cause you to see rainbows, unicorns, flying toasters, cause you to fall for every new challenge game and newest YouTube video that claims it knows exactly when the world is going to end. Wop wop.
I could dance a lifetime with my sweet tobacco rose. You could build your nation with dirty hands in denim clothes. And even in our twilight, I think that everybody knows. An open mind, a subtle heart are the only way she goes, and that's the way she goes. Just like an open door or window, that's the way she goes. Just like the bathwater with the baby, that's the way she goes. Too many people acting crazy, that's the way she goes. Have you been singing this song lately? The whistle on your kettle's been chirping, and beat red is the song. Your mortal shackle's been winning battles, I think you've known this all along. The squeaky wheel's been seasoned because the grease price is too high. Just change another channel, it never ever changes, and wave it all goodbye. That's the way she goes. Just like an open door or window, that's the way she goes. Just like the bathwater with the baby, that's the way she goes. Too many people acting crazy, that's the way she goes. If you've been singing this song lately.
Welcome back to Open Eyes. That's a little bit of Ed Roman there himself. Really great song. I love his music. And if you guys want to call in tonight, you can do so. The number is 260-494-3937. Skype line is JDA Film. And as always, we're over in the chat room at LNMRadioNetwork.com. And we're also live streaming, as we always are, over to YouTube, youtube.com/C/Open Eyes Network. Come on over, join in with us. Hit the little subscribe button there so that you guys can, get notified of when we put out a new show, which is all the time. Anyway, so we are back. And Ed, we do have a call that's coming in, but I wanted to ask you a question from on behalf of my wife. She was wondering, who's the lady that's singing there with you on that song?
That's my old-time friend, Michelle Rasky. We go back 20 years already now playing music together. I was a sideman for her for the longest time. She's a wonderful singer-songwriter. And she's actually the friend I was mentioning before that introduced me to Bob McCollum from Tesla magazine. So, everybody would say, are you guys sister, brother thing? Is this like, it's like kismet with Michelle. And when Mike Jack and I, my producer, engineer, were working on the track, I could cut the track myself and do the harmony myself. But then I was like, it's kind of like it needs that feminine touch. That little bit of, and I just thought, Michelle, right away, you have that instinct about musicians that you don't want to work with. And same thing with the keyboard part, Tobias Tinker, one of my oldest friends, who again came up in conversation about the story about my dad. I was like, yeah, keyboards for sure, but Michelle's just got one of those angelic voices. It's like Alison Krauss or something. I can't explain it.
It's really pretty. Yes, she's got that kind of almost etheric, no effort sort of type of voice. It's like it doesn't sound like she's making any effort. Like she's doing it without having any problems. No effort to it at all. And yet, if you were trying to do it yourself, it'd be like I couldn't even match it close.
Well, you know, that's beautiful. I'm going to tell her, too, because it's such a wonderful compliment. I hope she's listening tight, because she often does listen to my shows that I'm on. But it was like, what do you want me to do? She's like, and same thing with Tobias. I'm like, you know, again, with paying attention and feeling things, musicians have that instinct that when you hear something and it's telling you something already, it's pulling you through that experience. I'm like, well, what do you hear, Michelle? You know, she's got her own little studio at home, so she, you know, did her part that she needed to do, and she sent me things. I'm like, it's perfect. Like, you want me to do anything different? No! You know, don't change a thing.
Leave it alone.
It's just like you start to feel it, and that's the thing. Some of the people that I learned about that instinctual behavior, like Miles Davis would say, look, you know, go in a studio, Kind of Blue, one of the greatest jazz albums ever recorded. It's in the 101 greatest jazz albums of all time. Everybody starts listening to that record when they get into jazz. That album was written in 8 hours and cut in less. And if you listen to some of the solos even on that, and even with Coltrane's album with Giant Steps, Tommy Flanagan, Tommy, he thought it was a ballad when he got Giant Steps, and it even sounds, you know, intimidated when you hear that solo on there. Talking about a different record right now, but they were always of that opinion that if you couldn't get it by that feeling inside of 3 takes, go home.
Exactly.
Because that spontaneity and electricity needs to be captured. That's what draws you in. That's what draws the listener in. That's what draws the writing in. It's all part of the same experience. So to your wife, thank you. I'm gonna let Michelle know for sure.
Awesome. And you're absolutely right. It's that way with writing for me too. You know, if I'm trying to write something and I'm writing an outline for a new story, or I get hit, like I often write what I call flash fiction. It's just little short stories that are, you know, 500 to 1,000 words, just to keep my skills honed, you know, little fictional things. And normally, it's weird because when I'm writing it out, all of a sudden I'll get struck with an idea that, oh my God, this could go into a full-on book, you know? And so then I'll start playing around with it. And if it doesn't come to me right away, you know, if like the idea for the book doesn't come right away, I sort of let it go and say, okay, no, it's just a story in and of itself, and I'll let it lay there and be done with it. Because it's like my brain has not fully fleshed it out. If it hasn't fully fleshed it out by the time that short story is written, it's not going to have it fully fleshed out by the time that I'm ready to write the full-on book.
Right, and you feel that. I know what you mean, because otherwise you feel it breeds the sense of contravity.
Exactly.
You know, you're sitting there like the guy in the Muppets, you know, with his head banging against the piano. Oh, I'll never get it. I'll never bang, bang, bang. And that's the thing. When you do that, and like I go to the dollar store and buy, like, you know, those Duotang writing books for school or whatever, and they're already filled with paper for like $4 for $1. You do that, you get the stream going, and maybe 500 words, it might be 60 words, who knows? But then your mind jumps and you start thinking of other stuff. You may re-resurrect that. That may end up somewhere else in some way. It might be one line. But the important thing is that sort of flow came down. And that last tune that you were just playing on the show, The Way She Goes, in the bathtub over and over again, my grandfather in my head going, dirty hands make clean money. Dirty hands make clean money. You know, he would always say these kinds of things to me like all the time. So that percolated for the longest time. And it wasn't until that moment, like you said, oh, this feels right. Scribble, 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 scribble. It came out over the course of a couple of evenings. Meanwhile, it sat there in the can for like 6 months going, what are you going to say about this? You know, like, I don't know. Don't bug me, but it'll come out, right?
I love it. Well, we do have a call that's coming in here. Let's go ahead and bring them in. I do believe this is Doug that's on the line with us. Doug, is that you?
Yes, indeed it is.
Hey, Doug, what's on your mind? What do you got for Ed?
You got me confused now. Ed, did you do
Yes,
I
Doug.
Am Love?
Do I? Yeah, that's one of my tunes, yeah, from the latest album, Red Omen.
Okay, I was just making sure that I had the right Ed since Ira said that there was 2 Ed Romans out there, and I go, oh man, I've watched all your videos.
There are a whole bunch. There's a guitar maker who had passed away in California.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. He's got a bunch of videos up there. Do you got some up there too?
Absolutely, and there's a lot of musicians, guitar players that were searching out Ed for, you know, custom-made instruments for the longest time because he made great instruments.
Right.
Anything else you got on your mind there, Doug?
I guess that's the other Ed Roman that made the guitars, and he had the guitar. I was going to ask him to play a tune on his guitar. Are you ready for that, Ed?
You got me in the kitchen, not right now, because I ain't got no guitar around me.
Well, there you go, Doug.
Always be prepared for the
Yeah,
event.
well, and I was going to say about the Ed Roman thing, there's like another Ed Roman that's a glass blower, another Ed Roman that's a potter, makes like sculptural pieces, dishes, bowls, cups, plates. One day I'm sitting at home and the phone rings, and it's this Parisian woman calling from France. And she's like, "Is this Ed Roman?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "The artist Ed Roman?" I'm like, "Yeah." "Canadian?" "Yeah." "I just love your work." And she goes on, and I can't do a good French accent anyway. Make a long story short, I realized, at the end, she goes, "I would like to order 24 of your crystal glasses." And I'm like, "Crystal glasses?" I'm like,
that's funny.
I had to say very nicely, I'm like, "I don't make glasses." She's like, "Aren't you Ed Roman?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then I started doing searches. So I find there's all these other Ed Romans, including the guy that was out in California, the guitar maker. So what I did is I sent a mass email, I got everybody's email address, and sent emails saying, "Let's start the Ed Roman project." I don't know what it'll be, if it'll involve glass, ceramics, guitars, music, whatever it'll be. But it never transpired. And lo and behold, the guy we were just talking about had passed away.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be kind of funny if you guys got together and I don't know, the glass blowing done at the same time that a music instrument's being played, and see what the vibrations create out of the glass blown, and all kinds of interesting things could come out of that kind of a project.
That'd be cool.
Media show.
Well, Doug, thanks for calling in. We appreciate it.
All right.
Have a great night.
Catch you later. Bye.
So, Ed, when we were talking earlier, one of the things that was coming to my mind is with the conversation with autism. What do you think as far as autism and creativity goes? Do you think that there's something that's there with autism that's sort of specifically geared towards being a creative in some kind of way, or do you think there's something else that's going on?
I think it could be a multitude of things, but it goes back to what you were saying before, Ira, about the conditioning. I've worked with high-functioning autism and low-functioning autism people, autistic people, people with Asperger's, dyslexics like myself. Usually I find the conversations I have are really intellectual, and they're based in very focused topics, obviously, in certain cases. But it's that outside of the box, mentality towards stuff. I think that like savants that also have that aspect of that really incredible photographic memory with certain things. Like, I can't remember his name again. You play him a Bach piece once, and he'll play it back perfectly.
Yeah.
There is something about that part of the mind that is turned on in a different way. And in the young age, and as an educator, there's many things I would love to change in the education system, one of which is integrate far more agriculture and like tactical, hands-on like behavior in the classroom. But that's the thing. When you're expected to regurgitate,
I'm not sure what's going on here. All of a sudden we got cut off. I'm not sure what's happening as far as the connection goes. If everybody's still hearing me, that would be appreciated to let me know over there in the chat room. Can you still hear me? I'm kind of wondering if our connection in general got turned off here. Okay, so we're still connected apparently. Yeah, we'll go ahead and try to get Ed back on here just a moment. Sorry, folks. Technical difficulties. You guys know how it is.
Hello, and thank you for calling.
Okay, we'll try to get him back here again. Tell you what, let's go ahead and we'll do a little bit more music here, I think, while we try to get him back online again. Sorry, folks. Live episode. You guys know how it is. It's a happening. It's a thing. I'll tell you what, though, this has been a great guest. I've really enjoyed having him on so far, and really interesting conversation, to say the least. I think he's calling back in now, actually. Ed, is that you with us again?
I'm here. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know what happened there. We got disconnected somehow.
The gremlins.
Indeed. Well, when we're talking about this kind of topic, it's really frequent how this kind of thing happens, and especially with the paranormal. I think that spirits in general, they really are electromagnetic in nature, and they sort of maybe not intentionally end up interfering a lot of times with electrical equipment.
You never know. And I've been on some shows, some kind of heavy-duty conspiracy programs in the past, and I've had everything from my Wi-Fi shut down for no reason during the show, as well as my phone line, then come back on again after the show.
Yeah.
Like complete breakdowns at the studio, wherever the other location is. The board will go completely down for no reason. Anything can happen, so...
Well, we were just about finished with what you were talking about there. I think you had gotten out on most of the salient points.
Right. So we were saying, and with autism and stuff like that, I think it's like, you're kind of forced to think outside of the box. In the school system, we regurgitate information. We're expected to, as factual as it may be, is what I was saying, that it kind of doesn't promote creative thinking. And when I've seen, in my experience working with autistic people, they shine is when they can be themselves and focus the way that they need to. So it's inside of that box that we're always expected to participate in that is not always the healthiest. It's funny, it's interesting, because I had done a documentary on special education based on my problem with dyslexia. It was called The Art of Dyslexia. And what was fascinating about my interview with the head of special education at the University of Toronto was, she said there's a direct correlation to the amount of people that drop out of high school as there is to the amount of people entering the prison system. That means we're failing people on an educational level. We're not teaching them creative thinking that gives them what you were talking before, that ability to imagine. Because when you imagine, you create. And you don't have to necessarily always be a part of the direct system of things. People say to me, Ed, you can go to a grocery store. You can buy food. What are you, a prepper? What are you? No. My great-grandparents did this, my grandparents did this, my parents did this, my brothers and sisters and I do this. It allows me that connectiveness that I need to have as a human, the animal still inside me, that then re-accelerates the appreciation level for my living environment. I'm not on a bush, I'm not in a forest, I'm not hunting, I'm not fishing, I'm not camping, I'm not whatever it is. I'm just living in my space. And when I do that, it separates me again. It allows me to think creatively outside of that, because I can just turn on any machine and start getting the insanity right away.
When it comes to autistics, one of the things that I've kind of discovered over time is that normally we look at life, we look at the world, we look at everything that we go through a filter of all the experiences that we've had from the moment of conception forward. So every decision that we make, every move that we make, it's all done through that filter of all of that accumulation on us. With autistics, I think one of the dramatic differences with a lot of them is that filter isn't there. They're exposed to all information at all times, and they're sort of making that decision in that moment without any filter put into place. So it's sort of amazing some of the things that they can come up with, or again, like you were describing, that out of the box thinking is because they are looking at it without that filter in place like everybody else does.
Yeah, great examples like in What's Eating Gilbert Grape. I know it's just a film, but here he climbs to the top of the water tower. There's no filter of fear. Most adults or people that age might have the shaky leg, or I'm not doing that, or you go first, or I double dare you. But that non-filter allows for that kind. It can be dangerous, but it allows for that, beyond belief expression, beyond belief activity. All of that stuff is healthy, because a lot of people will talk themselves out of so many things. and then you've lost yourself to that experience.
Exactly. They almost talk themselves out of life, period. You know, it's really what it comes down to. Well, let's get back to the paranormal a little bit here. I wanted to ask you your thoughts as far as the paranormal goes. What would you say, in your experiences, is the most dramatic or the most impactful paranormal experience that you've ever had?
Well, that's a great question. And, you know, it's one of the stories for me that's now multiple people's story. That is, you know, people, you'll have a conversation about the spiritual world or the paranormal, and they're like, yeah, I don't really believe in that kind of stuff or whatever. And you start telling stories. Well, you know, when my friend, a good friend of mine, he's a drummer, passed away in tragic circumstances, you know, and irony like to the hilt in terms of his death. He was a food and beverage manager at a club. He had a bad peanut allergy, worked there for 14 years, went and played hockey, went back to the club, ordered some wings and some finger food. The waitress that was supposed to take the orders out, symmetrical orders to 2 different tables, she went to the bathroom. Another waitress comes, takes the orders out, mixes them up. 45 minutes later, he's dead. 4-month-old baby boy and a beautiful wife. Okay, so with that said, it's an incredible wave of trauma, sorrow, all of that stuff. But you got to understand one thing about my friend Bain. Odd name, Bain Arnold. Usually Arnold's like a first name, Bain, you know, maybe be a last name, Conrad Bain, right? He was a trickster, fun guy, but had that premonition feeling in his life that he wasn't going to live very long. And would say things like that. You know, I don't know how long I'm going to live. Hey, buddy, you know, come on, don't say that kind of stuff. But lived his life to the fullest. Really, like, not just envelope pushing. Happy, gregarious, did a lot of stuff, helped a lot of people, was very involved in a lot of things, started some wonderful charity organizations, so many wonderful things. So here we are, funeral passes, 45 maybe of us sitting around this little, you know, pub, and reminiscing upstairs, and it's going on for hours, getting kind of hot. We decide I'm going to go down the street, just get out of here for a little while, because it's intense. It's been all day, the funeral, the get-together, and everything that's going on. So while I'm standing there, I see these 3 boys. They're walking down the street, and I can hear them. They're getting louder. I can hear the conversation becoming clear. Well, we got to break into a junkyard, and we got to steal a door. If we steal the door from the junkyard, we can maybe put it on his parents' car, and they won't be any the wiser. And I said, hang on a second. I just said, I listened to your conversation here, and they looked at me kind of startled because I think they thought I caught them at something, which I did. They were talking about breaking into a junkyard. Listen, Ira, when I was a kid about this age, we did something almost identical, where we literally went to a friend's house that lived next to a junkyard who got us in through the wall and a fence, where we got an old Pinto door, drove it 1.25 miles down the road on our bikes, replaced it on his parents' car. They weren't the wiser. We did something really stupid at a stupid age. I said, I'm standing here, my friend that did that with me had passed away, and I can't believe that you're telling this story right now while I decide at that moment in the day to come out to the street right here, right now. And they're kind of looking at me, they're chuckling, oh, sorry about your friend, and da-da-da-da. We're sort of having, I said, listen, would you come inside and just meet my friends? They're all upstairs. I have to have you come in to create validity from my experience that this just happened, because they won't believe me if I go in there alone and tell them the story. So they said, sure. So they come in with me, walk up the staircase and take my jacket off, and it kind of gets quiet. I said, hey, everybody, and I started telling them what happens. Told them what happens, and the place goes white. Everybody's face. Oh, what the? My friend said, Ed, we were just telling that story. So for them to be telling the story, me to decide to leave the room at that moment in time, not know that they were telling the story, go down to the street, have 3 kids arbitrarily that I don't know that are going to decide to do this exact same thing on the exact same night, that my friend has passed away at his funeral and his thing. The chances of those 3 things occurring at that moment in time are like in the trillions to 1. It's almost impossible to discount those sets of circumstances. And right away, I knew I could hear my friend as clear as bell. He sounded like Ernie from Ernie and Bert when he'd laugh, laughing in my ear. It's me, dude. I'm screwing with you.
Yeah.
You know, we're having a good time. I'm here. It's okay. everything's all right. And I lost it. I was just like weeping in my spot, in my boots. And when I tell people that story, and I watch their skin and watch their hair stand up on end, and they get this crazy look in their face, they can't explain it. It's one of those things that very different from what we said before, where not until later you look back, and it then starts to show itself later, like, oh, that's what this was immediate. I mean, literally, like, days after he had passed away, the event is occurring, the entire day, the funeral, the ceremony, the whole thing, then old friends getting together, go to the pub at night, talk, click, click, bang, bang. What the? So for me, that story is one of those real punctuation moments that even for me, I share a lot with other people that aren't necessarily non-believers, but, are interested in hearing about those experiences.
With that in mind, one of the experiences that I've had or things that I've come to learn, I guess you could say, is a lot of times there are things that they're doing, that the spirit world is doing behind the scenes to guide people into different experiences, different things that they want to have set up. So it seems like often they will have visited somebody and that ends up leading them to a certain place after they've visited you, and you end up getting led into that certain place. And suddenly now you're having this shared experience with the person, or they'll guide people into certain directions. And it's subconscious, it's all happening again behind the scenes. You're not aware that you're being guided by them. And yet by the time everything's said and done, again, like you're saying, that aha moment of holy crap, that really happened. I mean, I think that's a big part of what happens with all of this stuff.
Well, 2020 again, hindsight, and you've just conjured a thought. I was thinking about him the other day, and he was like really a glue mechanism in our group of friends. You'd always get the dependable phone call once a week. Hey, man, what's going on? What's shaking? What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. It didn't matter what was going on, right? And I started to think that, and of all the people that could have experienced something like that, not only the 5 or 6 that were directly involved in the shenanigans incident with the car door, but the 40 really close friends that all kind of knew and hung out at that old farmhouse, my buddy's place, years and years ago when we were kids, was all there as part of that validity thing, and thinking like the strength inside of the friendship, the representation of the spiritual moment that occurs. It was all meant for us at that moment, kind of like what we were talking about before.
Right, exactly. The synchronicity, I think really has a lot to do with all of this. Again, how 2 or 3 unrelated things end up actually being so intimately interconnected, they may as well not even be apart.
Exactly, yeah.
So you mentioned UFOs earlier in the show, and I wanted to kind of go back to that a little bit. Have you ever had any UFO experiences yourself, like where you've seen them or even been contacted by things?
Never contacted, but that first part of the family allegory, as I mentioned, the story about the mass sighting, that was one thing that got me looking up, I guess you might say, and asking questions and hearing other stories that my grandfather told about strange lights landing in the field when he was combining at night. And my experience, it's funny, again, at a moment where a lot is going on in my life, and having to come home from farm to farm with my sister-in-law and seeing what I describe as an orb, a red orb, but it was at distance and it was very large. And what seemed interesting to me about it is that it seemed to be like, welder's light, like an arc light, but red though, right? But defined as a ball, but yet couldn't complete itself. So it had that fuzziness to it, and the center of it seemed to be very white, almost like when you looked at it, the color promoted the idea that was hotter than whatever the exterior was, even though it was red. And the red had kind of swirled into a more finite point of what that ball was. So my sister-in-law is driving, and we're coming into the other farm, and I see it, And I just said, stop the car. And she said, what's wrong? And I said, look. And she saw exactly the same, described what it was. And before the car had stopped, I had opened the door and was already running out of the car. And she was worried I was going to, like, fall on the pavement. And she's like, Edward, she calls me by my full name, and everybody calls me Ed, though. Come back here, come back. And I remember going to the edge of the tree line, and it was like vibrating in a way that it was sort of like pulsating, but in its vibration, you could tell it wanted to go somewhere. Like it was trying to push itself somehow. And it would move very quickly, off on a diagonal, or like to the left on a horizontal, and then go up on a 45-degree angle very slowly, then stop. And then it would come down slightly a little bit, and then shoot off to its right. And it kept kind of like making these odd geometric patterns in the sky, but continually moving to the west while it was doing this, like almost like it was searching for something for me visually on a plane in front of me. So I would say if you put your thumb out in the air and you looked at your thumbnail, a mile and a quarter away, it was about as big as your thumbnail. So whatever it was pretty big. But again, like other experiences I've had, you're exhilarated by what you don't understand. I'm getting out of a moving vehicle and running to a tree line, not knowing what I'm going to encounter. And at the same time, through that exhilaration, realize I'm terrified.
Uh-huh.
Like I don't know what this is. And this happened for about 6 minutes. And I remember my sister-in-law, I'm like, Lynn, come here. She wouldn't get out of the car. She was like completely terrified. And I was thinking, Travis Walton, all these things going through my mind. So I just sort of, backed away, like with my back to the car and looking at it. And it slowly sort of moved off to the west. I lost it in a tree line that was on the next side road. So whatever it was doing was moving down again towards the road line, much further west than where we were. So that for me was like, what drove me crazy about it, though, is that here we go back to the house, my mom, my dad, everybody's there and everything. She won't talk about it. She, to this day, still refuses to talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
Because it scared the hell out of her. And like I said, it did the same thing to me, but you're pushed by that, what is the unknown? You feel like, Close Encounters and Richard Dreyfuss, why do I have this beep in my head?
This means
like
something.
That, you're driven,
Yeah. Yeah, if you've got the whole mashed potatoes, this means something.
Yeah. And that's it. I still, for me, in a lot of my experiences that were like that, or my other Bigfoot experience, I'm not saying this is what I saw. I'm not saying I saw a Bigfoot. What I'm describing, other researchers, the BFRO, John Bindernagel in the U.S., who I contacted about it, they're all like, well, that's kind of what people are seeing. This is defined by your experience. But again, the thing that I saw is an orb. I'm not saying it's a UFO, but it acted really weird. It scared the hell out of me. It tied that, again, with what my family's own personal experiences were. Something that is like, is this something that keeps reoccurring to my family? Is this something because of the geography and the landscape on an ancient creek system that the farms were on? Is it old, some sort of spiritual territory of some kind? I don't know, because there's been so many kinds of different experiences in my family that it's hard for me not to go, why is this all happening to us?
Right, exactly. Well, you had what would be classically defined as a UFO experience. It's unidentified. You can't identify it. It was flying and it's an object. That's literally what it is. That doesn't necessarily equate it to being aliens or whatever. You're not explaining what it is. You're just saying this is what it is. I had an experience that was actually really similar myself as far as the visual goes. The description that you gave, it was almost a dead-on match to mine, except the color was more of a greenish color instead of red. But I was driving with some people down the road. I used to work for a railroad company, and I would drive the workers from one location where they got dropped off at a train to the next location where they'd be picked up by another one, or where they'd filter their way home. And so we were driving down the highway. It was late at night. I had about 12 guys that were in the van with me. And in the back mirror, I could see that there was a light that was getting closer and closer, and it was going really rapidly. I mean, we're going down the highway at like 65 miles an hour, and yet this thing's catching up to us like it's nothing, you know? So, you know, we're going down the road, and the light gets brighter and brighter. And like I said, it's kind of this greenish tinge to it. But eventually it comes up actually beside us on the road. And again, I'm flying down the road at 65 miles an hour. I'm not watching the road at all. I'm looking at this light, whatever it is, you know.
What is it? Yeah.
And all the guys that are in the van, we're all like, oh my God. But we couldn't say anything. Well, none of us spoke. No words were spoken. Nobody was shouting or anything. And then just a moment later, it hit the gas and it took off like a shot down the road and then went up straight up into the air. And we had this, I mean, I slammed on the brakes after it was all said and done, and we kind of pulled off to the side of the road, and all of us were shaking like, what the crap did we just see? You know, and none of us could explain it. But, you know, it's weird because there's some people that have these experiences with these more energetic craft or whatever it may be, while others are experiencing the more mechanical kind of things, which I've also had an encounter with. So I don't know. I can't explain either one of them. You know, the mechanical one, maybe it's our own governments, you know, practicing with new technologies that they don't talk about or things along those lines. Or maybe it is, you know, aliens from somewhere else, not necessarily even off planet. Maybe they're from inside the planet. But the energy ones, it's really weird because, you know, how do you explain that? Here's this really, I mean, again, that's the only way you can explain it is it's an energy of some kind.
Well, that's just it. Even with the one mass sighting, with my family sighting, that's what I was saying. It was so bright, it was hard to look at it, and it was close. Like, I mean, 35 to 40 feet from our kitchen window, in between the barn, chicken coop next to the barn. And at first, my mom thought a small Cessna, because we live near the airport, Buttonville Airport, was going to crash into the house. And the vibration was so intense. But then she realized that, well, there's nothing running that's making it vibrate, and there's no sound, but just vibration. But that the light, this orb, was so hard to look at, like an arc light, but you look off to the side because you knew maybe you shouldn't be looking at it. Well, any normal incandescent bulb is going to cast a shadow from a tree, a car, a person. It didn't do that. So that's what was really fascinating to my family, and like, you know, that it gives you that silence moment, like you're talking about everybody in the truck. Well, nobody says anything because you're trying to reboot.
Yeah.
There's something going on, and you're like, wait a minute, I'm trying to rationalize everything I can possibly think of at this moment in time, and nothing is coming to mind. I'm afraid. You know, and then your mind starts to go into fight or flight. Like, we got to get out of here. You're saying you're speeding up the truck. You're doing 65 or 70 miles an hour. You're not watching the road. You're trying to figure out what the heck's chasing you.
Exactly.
So, and it's the same thing even with the Bigfoot thing. Here, it's like 6:30 in the afternoon at the first week of July, 3 years ago. And the coyotes are going crazy. I'm with my dog outside. He's been chased by them before, so I put him back in the house. Go to the crest of the field that slopes down, and you can't see what's at the lower half of the field because of the crest of the hill. And as I get there, I see this dark, tall figure that I thought at first, my brain is trying to process. Somebody is wearing a skidoo suit in the middle of July, the beginning of July, hot weather, and a balaclava in the field, and the coyotes won't come out of the bush, and they're yelping, and they refuse to like, they're afraid. You can tell that they're upset. Squats down, excuse the pun, comes charging out like a quadruped on all four legs like a bear, and it probably covers 35 or 40 yards in less with 5 bounds. Stands up on 2 feet again, turns to its left, and walks 25 acres to the southeast. Now, at this point, I'm down on all fours, was in a genuflecting position, and I'm starting to crawl as fast as I can back to the house because I am terrified.
Yeah.
My perception is what I keep seeing is looking over my shoulder. Is this thing coming after me? Did it do this because I'm upwind of it? All of these things your mind is trying to process. What the heck is this? And then talking to hunters that I know, calling the BFRO, talking to people like Meldrum and other people. And they're like, yeah, you probably had some kind of a, experience. for me, even though I still I didn't see the thing in front of me wearing a sign that said "I am Sasquatch," my experience is still defined by the fear of what happened. It took me, Ira, almost 3.5 to 4 months to go back into the bush myself.
Oh, I can believe
it. People laughing at me. I'm like, dude, look, I don't care what you say. I'm not going back there myself.
I can believe it, absolutely. And I'm sorry, but unfortunately, we are out of time tonight.
Crazy,
and
baby.
It feels like we barely even got scratching the surface with everything, I'll tell you. But let me give you a moment here to get out information about where people can find you, where can they find your music, all of that good stuff.
Absolutely. The newest record I put out, ladies and gentlemen, is Red Omen. You can get it at my website, edroman.net. All my other records you can get there as well. You can get all my other records at Amazon, iTunes, CD Baby. Check me out on SoundCloud, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And then obviously there's my YouTube channel, Special Ed Roman. We get lots of fun videos about food, agriculture, UFOs, stories, music, all kinds of crazy stuff. Become an Ed head today.
I will definitely become one myself. Love your music. I love your thoughts. It's such a pleasure to have you on tonight. This has been a great show. I know the listeners have really been enjoying it all along. So I would love to invite you to come back on anytime that you want. You are more than welcome to come on.
Be a pleasure. We'd have a great chat again. No problem. Anytime, my friend.
Absolutely. Hang out for a minute. I'll talk to you after the show's off the air.
Wonderful.
Okay, thank you guys for listening tonight. This has been Open Eyes. My name is Ira Robinson. If you guys want to go to the archive of this show, you guys can find it at OpenEyesNetwork.com as well as YouTube.com/C/OpenEyesNetwork. If you guys want to send me an email, you can send it to feedback@OpenEyesNetwork.com, and we'll have all of Ed's information archived, listed with the archive of the show over there at OpenEyesNetwork.com. If you guys want to meet us on social media, we're everywhere. Open Eyes Network on all of the different social media platforms. We will be live again next week. Got a couple of great shows coming up. Make sure you guys tune on in, 7 o'clock p.m., wherever you guys are listening to this now. You can listen to that then, and I would love to have you on. Don't forget as well, Sunday night, 8 o'clock p.m., Money and Change, my show with Stu Shear will be on. And then the Positude podcast is going to be on with me and Maggie Hart. So make sure you guys tune on in. If you guys want to check out my own books, you guys can check those out over at originalworlds.com. That's originalworlds.com. Don't forget, I've got a couple of books that are coming out here real soon. I've got 6 books already out there for you guys to take advantage of. So, yeah, come on over there today. Don't wait. Anyways, thank you, everybody, for coming and listening. This has just been a great show. I love the topic. I love talking about these subjects. And as you guys know, I'm always fascinated by them. So, and Ed, what a great guest. Just an absolute plethora of information and wonderful thoughts. So until next time, guys, keep safe out there. Have fun. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. And we'll talk to you again soon.